Okay, hello. My name is Mario Rosas, and this is my spiritual formation, spiritual journey plan presentation. I wasn't able to access any type of PowerPoint or anything due to the sake of time. This is my timeline. These are kind of like my slides. I was hoping to put together some type of pictures or something, but it's literally 11:25. So this is my spiritual journey timeline. I started as a kid. You see, at 5 years old, I started seeing visions of a man with a staff in his hands on a white horse flying towards me when I would close my eyes. It was crazy because I could remember that ever since a kid. And now that I know that was Jesus flying towards me and trying to get my attention ever since a kid, I just think that's so amazing. And then I go to 12 years old. I started to experience spiritual warfare. I come from a broken home at 9 years old, a lot of arguing. I was the oldest at the time, and so I started cutting myself. I started being disrespectful. I was feeling unworthy to live. I heard voices that tell me I was unworthy, that to kill myself. I started cutting myself. I still have scars on my arm from 12 years old. And around that time when I would go into a rage, right? And my mom and dad called a family friend who introduced me to the gospel, teaching me about Jesus at 12 years old. So these seeds started being planted in me. And then at 13, my mom started attending a Christian church. So from 13 to 15, like I said, these represent the slides. But I started attending a youth group at a Christian church. I developed a love for serving and learning about Jesus. You see, because around that time, too, we struggled financially. So there would be times where we would have to go get a food basket. But one thing my mom was doing is she made sure that we served. And she made sure that we were last to get the basket because she felt that we didn't need it, that other people needed it more than we did. So what we did is we served, and I developed a love to go out there and serve and help and fill the boxes and take boxes to the car and all that. And even learning about Jesus, attending my youth group, I fell in love with my youth pastor. He was awesome and amazing. We did cool things. We went to ski trips, went to the lake in the summertime. We even did stuff. We went to Mexico and we served over there in the dumps of Tijuana. And these were just like some of the most memorable moments as a young teenager learning about Jesus. And at 16, my youth pastor left. So I started hearing about the church politics. So around that time, like I would hear, the mom gossip about what was going on in the church. And it just, certain stuff just didn't sit right with me as a teenager. And I decided to stop going. And so from 16 to 20, that's when I ran from God. I was confused. I was hurt. I was lost. I was messing around with I was like rebelling. So I started doing like devil worship. I was listening to devil worship music. We would do little seances and stuff. And around this time is when I started getting taunted by demons. I would wake up in my room and be all dark, and I would feel things flying over me. I would be like sleep paralysis, like paralyzed, where I couldn't move. I was experimenting with drugs, so of course I was opening spiritual doors. I got high. By the time I was 20, I experimented with every single drug that you could think of. Only thing I didn't do was use a needle. But I've experimented with heroin and psychedelics, LSD, mushrooms, ecstasy, cocaine, meth, all that. I've been hooked on a lot of those drugs too throughout the years. And at 21, I was this after, of course, but I was filled with so many demons. I lost my mind to a spirit of paranoia at the age of 21. My mom called my uncle who lived out of town, and he was a believer. And the crazy part about this, the testimony from this is later on in the future, he told me that he couldn't sleep, and God woke him up, and he could hear the voice of God. And he said God woke him up, and he was praying, and from that prayer, God told him, "Be ready, I'm sending you somebody." And 2 days later, my mom calls him saying, "Nick, it's Mario." They call me Little Mario because I'm junior. They're like, "Nick, it's Little Mario. I don't know what to do with him." And my mom said, all he said was send him, because he knew right then and there that was the assignment that God was telling him about. And so I moved in with my uncle that night for some reason, and it was only because of God, of course. But I knew that he was a believer, and I asked him to pray for me. And by me asking him to pray for me, he did that deliverance on me. And he said demons were coming out. My face was disfigured. Of course, he said the demons manifested through me. They were taunting him, all types of stuff. And it was crazy because I remember being weak for like 2 weeks after that, reading the Word, and just kind of having a renewed mind, a fresh mind. And within those 2 weeks, I accepted the Lord in my heart as my Savior. So at 21, I gave my life to Christ, but I did not fully surrender. I was still had a wild mindset. I still had a street mindset. And although I love going to church and I loved, the things of God, I still loved the world. So it was like a double-minded man, how it talks about in James, And so about a year later, I went back to the world. And so that leads me from 22 to 33. We're on these slides. I got about 7 slides right here. But so 22 to 32, I'm lost. I'm back in the world. From drug abuse to drug selling. I knew some big time drug dealers, so I was selling as much as I was doing, which was a lot of drugs. I've had suicide attempts. I've tried to commit suicide off 32 ecstasy pills. I popped 10 ecstasy pills at one time, and I kept popping for 2 days straight and sniffing cocaine. And I didn't die by the grace of God and God's grace and His mercy. In and out of jail. I've been raided. I've been all types of these things, man, and it's just lost. I lost my dad, my grandma, my sister, and my best friend, all within a few years of each other. And so this led me at 32 to go back to my uncle's, ready to surrender. I was finally ready to give everything up, but, right, there's always a but the weed. But everything else I was ready to get. So at 32, I started going and getting kind of discipled by my uncle. They kind of knew about me smoking weed, but they were patient with me. And I didn't do it in front of them or anything like that, but they just knew still. But this time I was serving more. I was going to a youth group. The youth pastor seen I had a calling upon my life, so he'd always invite me out. And I would tell him, like, man, I'm still struggling. I don't feel right coming to the youth group or being a leader. And he told me one time, he goes, Mario, keep coming, because one thing's going to have to give. And if you keep on coming, you're going to keep on coming, and you're going to let go of that. And so at 32 to 35, my battle with my walk, I got called into a discipleship home. And so I didn't know. I say God okey-doked me, right? Because I knew I was part of ministry before, so I knew I was going to get a chance in ministry. But it wasn't the type of ministry that I thought. And when I said discipleship, I didn't really know what discipleship was. And when I went, it was a home for men who struggle with drugs and alcohol and stuff like that. So I was really kind of in denial that I had a problem. And when I went, it made me just be more open about the problems and stuff that I was doing in secret. And so I did a year in the discipleship home, 6 months of internship with a youth ministry, with my walk, just growing. And then it's crazy because all this led up to me to going to some. And so learning these spiritual disciplines in the all through this whole journey, I really didn't, there's not really anything that I could put into practice of what I learned in the school, except for going into the discipleship home, learning like the similar like Lectio Divina, but learning meditation, learning worship, learning prayer, learning spiritual disciplines, learning accountability, learning to stay above reproach, learning to put together a plan, and sticking to it, just learning all these things. So this is where I would really say that I learned what I've learned in the spiritual formation class. This is what I also learned in the discipleship, which is kind of really exciting, because it's kind of like I've learned more like with the Lectio Divina, and other spiritual practices. But this too is also something that I learned. So I'm almost at 10 minutes. I know I'm going to get docked for not having everything the right way, but I'm just hoping to get some points and pass this class. Thank you very much.